Welcome to Southern Steep, the public health and social justice podcast brought to you by NASDAD, a nonprofit, nonpartisan association mission to end the intersecting epidemics of HIV, viral hepatitis, and related conditions. Much like brewing stronger tea, this platform aims to brew a stronger community by centering community leaders' voices and their innovative work in the Southern United States.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rodderick Shepherd. I am one of your co-hosts here at Southern Steep, and we have a fun and amazing episode ready for you all today. And for the first time with a guest on the show, we have Shanice, and I'm going to allow her to introduce herself. I'm just really excited to work with Shanice on the podcast. She's one of my faves here at NASDAQ.
Right back at you. I'm also really excited to be joining the podcast and hosting with y'all today. My name is Shanice Bailey, and the newest co-host for Southern Steep. And I use she, her pronouns. I'm really excited to speak with y'all today so we can get things started.
So we have a very, very special guest here with us today. AJ King is a brother of mine. He's one of the first advocates that I met in the field, and I have formed a very fond relationship with AJ King. I love AJ King. I'm going to start the episode off by saying that, and then moving on to his bio. So AJ King lives in Washington, D.C. and has worked over a decade in managing and developing programs focusing on sexual health, advocacy, HIV/STI and pregnancy prevention, treatment and education, clinical mental health, racial equity, LGBTQ+, and youth populations, with a passion for LGBTQ youth of color. AJ has worked to fight stigma, disparities, and injustice within this population. He also contracts with George Washington School of Public Health as a clinical researcher focusing on biomedical interventions and research for PrEP, hookworms, and COVID-19 vaccinations. Currently, AJ is the Assistant Director of the Multicultural Students Services Center at George Washington University and will be transitioning in January 2024 to Director of Intercultural Affairs at Howard University. He is also the Director of Street Outreach at Sasha Bruce Youthwork. AJ has independent projects focusing on substance abuse, HIV, and mental health in the community. He served as Vice President of Impulse Group DC, a global HIV advocacy organization for gay men funded by AIDS Healthcare Foundation, AHF. He is also the founder and director of the 2015 Obama White House award-winning theater program, Breaking Ground. Breaking Ground is a unique theater program for LGBTQ youth of color that develops a full-length musical theater production based on the true life stories of the cast members, addressing the unique and complex experiences of this population. AJ graduated from the University of the District of Columbia with his master's in clinical mental health and rehabilitation counseling and his bachelor's in social work. Shout out to the Firebirds out there. Welcome, AJ King.
Yes, Firebirds. Thank you for that, Rodderick and Shanice. Pleasure to be on this call with you all and the amazing introductions to both of you. So appreciate it.
Yes, of course. AJ, thank you for being here. I was so excited to highlight Breaking Ground on the show and let them know like what we got going on in DC in terms of being a part of the South. So I wanted to loop our guests in with the check-in question this time around. So what would the world be without art?
Ooh, a dark place. Very, very dark place, right? I mean, art is such a expressive outlet and it looks so many different ways, right? I mean, typically when people hear the word art, they think of painting on a canvas, and art is through music and theater and dance and poetry and dot, 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 dot. It just keeps going and going, right? And art is such a personalized experience and unique to everyone, right? So, I mean, it could be as simple as, how someone dyes their hair, or,
Mhm.
the way that the vernacular, that's an art, about how they speak. So it would just be boring and dark and drab and terrible, and not a world I would want to live in.
Yeah, I echo all of that. I think it would just be worse. I think the world would be a worse place without art. I think that our world just feels increasingly divided, and art can transcend so many of those differences. It gives us a common language of expression, a medium to share our feelings, our hopes, our frustrations that we can't always express, in our day-to-day lives. And, it just provides an outlet for our ideas, our politics, our visions for the future, and also just lets us create for the sake of creating. Before I worked at NASDAQ, I actually worked in the arts. I come from an art museum and gallery background. And I firmly believe that there's a place for everyone in the arts. Like, I was a stage crew girly myself, so like not a performer, but I loved making those sets. Like, I've watched youth just come into themselves, getting really excited about learning how to do lights. Um, I think it's such a vital outlet for youth especially, and I'm really grateful for the work that you're doing, AJ, and I'm excited to learn more about it.
Thank you.
Of course.
That was good answers, y'all. Like, how do I even follow up with that? AJ, I love that you mentioned that art looks very different in, different forms. Even like you said, it's the fashion, it's how people style their clothes, it's TV and the production that goes in between making movies and shows and theatrical production. Books are art, like art comes in many different forms, and I consider myself to be a jack of all trades, and I want to master every single last one of those in terms of the arts. I've always been drawn to the arts as like a person. I used to draw and enter poster contests when I was in elementary school. I've been a part of choirs in church and the glee club at school. Like, I love the arts, so it's always been like a part of my foundation in terms of just who I am. I've always been creative. So yeah, I wouldn't want to live in a world without the art. So let's get into it. And I'm going to allow Shanice to get better acquainted with AJ and, pick his brain on a couple of things.
Amazing. Thank you, Rodderick. So we're going to move into a section where we're talking a bit about art and advocacy. So to start, AJ, what is your why? Can you tell us about what drives you, what brings you to this work, what keeps you in this work?
Wow. Yeah. So when I was in elementary school, I had this love of horror movies. Like, I loved the Jason movies and Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger. And this is like 6 years old, right? And rightfully so, my parents were a little bit concerned because I would go to recess with like a little clothes hanger, acting like I was on I Know What You Did Last Summer, chasing the kids around, because I wanted to be the killer in horror movies when I grew up. What I'm saying? But I knew I wanted to get the arts and movies, in that role. And it was an opportunity for me to view art, even if it was in the form of horror movies, right? And find a way to incorporate myself into it. As I mentioned before, my parents were a little bit concerned at the time, like, what's that about? But, when I got into some theater classes in middle school, that's where I really got to expand my knowledge and depth around theater, around arts just in general. I had a very supportive theater teacher, in middle school. And I remember there was this improv team that only the eighth graders got into, and I was in seventh grade. And I was the first seventh grader to get into the improv club. And that was a big deal for me, considering I went to a predominantly white middle school in, the middle of Fairfax, Virginia, and Herndon. There weren't that many people of color, for this young Black boy to get into this improv club was a big deal and a big boost morale for me. That transitioned into high school, and what I realized going into the high school space is we would do these large scale productions like Oklahoma and Annie and all these other productions, but I wasn't getting casted in any of these roles because I didn't exactly fit the mold of any of these roles, still going to predominantly white high schools. So I actually had a boyfriend at the time. I was 15 years old, and he was in a theater program called City of Peace in Washington, D.C. And it was a theater program that utilized social justice as a vehicle for social change through theater. So we would have conversations around internalized and interpersonal, institutionalized racism and sexism and classism, and pretty much all the isms and how it impacts teenagers. And we were able to utilize our experiences to create art and theater, to express and tell these stories. It was an opportunity for me to not only, learn more from, people from different backgrounds and experiences through a social justice lens, but about myself as well too. As someone who was gay and half Black, half Mexican, adopted, growing up in a white household in Virginia, I honestly felt like I was an alien. I was like, who am I? There's no one looks like me. There's no one doesn't like me. There's no one who walks like me. I'm kind of just out here, right, trying to figure things out. And it helped me identify where I found some interpersonal challenges, around race, around gender, sexuality, etc., and also how I may interact with other populations, right? So that was a very impactful time in my life where I got to learn a lot about myself and through healing and change, and also open my eyes to the world of what counseling would look like for me. So I knew at a very young age that's kind of a route that I wanted to go as far as social justice and advocacy. Fast forward, I was in a fellowship called CRIB, which stood for Creating Responsible Intelligent Black Brothers, through the NASM conference, which is an annual HIV prevention conference in Atlanta. And I was 24 years old at the time, and I was tasked with a project of developing a program specifically only for Black gay men, around social justice, right? And that's pretty much the only parameters that we got. I sat and I reflected on it, what can this project look like? And I thought about the impact that the City Peace program had when I was a teenager, right? So I sat down, I actually met with the two directors of City of Peace. I told them about the project. They gave me some tips and tools. And then I was able to create my own curriculum that's specifically focused around Black gay men. So I developed this program, this curriculum. It was a complete pet project. I did not know what I was doing. It was completely volunteer based. We had zero funding, zero money. Luckily, Denham, which is the youth center of us helping us, allowed us to utilize their space for rehearsals. But when I tell you we had no money, we had no money. This is completely pro bono. Luckily there was another individual who was involved at Denham who had a background in music, and they agreed to come on as the assistant director and musical director. We were able to reach out to someone who volunteered to be a choreographer and a stage manager at the time. It was completely just grassroots volunteer work, 100%. We did all of our recruitment at Denham. All the people involved were, agreed to be in this cast. It was honestly just, the cosmos working and getting the right people in the right place at that time, right? Again, did not know what I was doing. This was my first time with this curriculum. I did not know if it would work. I did not know who would show up. I did not have a theater in place. I did not have anything in place. And so we just made it happen, right? We worked out this curriculum, and Rodderick was actually in that cast. It was the very first Breaking Ground cast ever. It was actually called Brother to Brother at the time. And what I realized as we went through this summer program is that at every rehearsal, I was seeing change in individuals, right? I was seeing change and transformation. When we would have certain conversations or do certain activities, it would hit in a certain way, right? Sometimes I didn't know what that hit looked like. I didn't know if that hit was a good hit or a bad hit. Was this more traumatizing? Was this going to do more long-term damage? Was this going to make change at the end? I did not know. And I'll be honest, I was nervous as hell, right? But the cast kept coming back. Every rehearsal, they kept coming back. I saw family developing. I saw relationships building. I saw connections forming. Just everything was kind of coming into place. Then we had our performance. We were at the Anacostia Arts Center. Luckily, I met with an individual who worked there. They donated the space for us. We had a GoFundMe where, we were able to raise I think it was $1,200 or something like that, so that we could get all the logistics. Did this performance. It was a fantastic performance. The cast did an amazing job. And so we were working, again, not knowing what we were doing, right? This was all by a whim. And I just remember the cast coming off the stage in this black box theater, and it almost felt like this collective joy mixed with this collective breath of release, right? It was like, we did this, right? We went through this. We went through these months of arduous, challenging conversations and unpacking childhood trauma and having hard conversations with one another and having wanting to fight the person sitting on the other side of the circle, right? But finding conflict resolution. And also this kind of sense of, yes, we're walking away from this program right now, but I also know that I'm going to walk away with tools that I can utilize in my real life outside of this rehearsal space. And so that was it, right? That was really just it. And I was like, okay, the project is over. I developed my project for my presentation at the conference, and I was like, okay, well, that was cute, that was fun, hands washed, done, right? And then God had other plans, obviously. The following year, I just kept getting calls and texts of when's rehearsal. I'm sorry, when's auditions, taking place, and what are the dates? And I'm sitting here like, what are you talking about? That was a one-time situation. Like, this is not, something that's supposed to be ongoing. But, that year went on, the year 2015 went on, and we didn't do the program. But then at the end of 2015, I still to this day don't know who, but we got nominated by the White House for LGBTQ Champions of Change. And for the 1 year we did it, and I was like, okay, this is like actually something that like is a need, right? Like, this is something that needs to continue. So went to the drawing board, and I was able to meet with SMYAL, which is a nonprofit organization in Washington, D.C. that focuses on LGBTQIA youth. And they saw the first performance, and they agreed to be a fiscal sponsor of the program. I would still have complete creative control over the program. It would not be a SMYAL program in that sense, but they would be able to deal with all the finances and looking for grants and supporting the program as much as possible. I met with the first year cast. We changed the name to Breaking Ground. We wanted it to be more inclusive to the entire LGBTQIA plus spectrum of color. And from there, it was just off to the races. We got grant funding from a lot of different resources, organizations, local and national grants. And we just kept it going, and the cast continued to grow. I believe our first year, our cast was maybe 12 people. At one point, our cast was 34 people, so it just continued to grow over the years. That was a very, very long-winded way to answer your question, but that is why I continue it, is because this progression of change and just seeing the impact that it's had on the community, and the impact on the individuals who are engaged in the program, and the impact on myself. This is just something that's a need in the community, because a lot of particularly LGBTQIA young people of color don't have a space to express themselves, and really show their art and tell their stories. That trauma just stays back here, and then we don't do anything with it because we don't know what to do with it. Well, here's a way to do something with it. And the last thing I'll say on that is, one thing I will say is there are people who came through that program who should be on stages with sold out audiences with the way that they can sing, but they've never had an outlet to show it, right? And so this has been an opportunity for the first time for some people to be on stage and finally share their voice, or share their acting talent, or share their dancing talent, or their poetry talent, or whatever the talent may be, their violin talent, their, whatever, right? And they don't have any other outlet or opportunity to do that. So that is why I continue to do it. That is why it's important. And yeah, that's it. Sorry, I that was a very long-winded answer.
It was not long-winded. It was deeply necessary. And I love being able to hear like your full trajectory. Like, you're so good at like telling your story, and you just breezed through all the other questions I had for you, which I adore. But I think it's, the way that you described your trajectory with this program is just such a testament to the power of community and what happens when you can just surrender yourself to possibility and, commit to the journey wherever it takes you. And I know that sounds a little bit woo-woo, but it's not actually woo-woo. You said it all. But I also just wanted to say, like, I have that image of you chasing kids on the playground with a hanger, like, burned into my brain now. And like, I love the sort of like queer child who confuses their parents to art worker pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
because I relate deeply.
Yeah, there were a lot of detentions after that, but I think it was worth it at the end. I got to express myself.
You did what you had to do.
Yes.
So, AJ, we have to go on a movie date because I love horror films. Love horror films. So we have to go on a movie date, one. And there was a couple of points you mentioned. First of all, the teacher that gave you an outlet and embraced you and allowed you to be a part of the improv group, it's so important. I found, like, growing up as an artist, like, I found, like, wanting to be an artist wasn't embraced in the same way that it would have been if I decided to play football or if I tried to do something else. Like, most parents will think to enroll their kids into, like, football camp or basketball camp, but, people don't think about, children who demonstrate interest in art. And mind you, I've always been, drawing some coloring books and drawing and all of that. So, parents don't often think to enroll a child into artist camp. So those mentors are very important. I think about my first mentor, Mr. Rice. Oh, Mr. Rice was such a blessing to me as a child. So those are so important. And then talking about the Breaking Ground experience, I feel like at the end of a show, you always kind of have like an exhale. Like you said, AJ, like, we did it, Joe. We did it. Like, it gives very much so that you get that exhale, and I look forward to kind of like that. Okay, we did it. Exhale at the end of a show. Like at the end of every show, I look forward to it. And so I'm going to go into our next section. And because I am a Breaking Ground alumni, I actually can highlight some of the work that we have done because it actually segues into my next question. So I'm going to highlight a little excerpt from some stuff I did with AJ and Breaking Ground back in the day. So here it is. My brush is painting a portrait that tells you that afterwards I conquered and beat HIV. You see, I'm undetectable and my T cells are flying high. I have a fabulous job as a HIV advocate, which includes traveling the world and speaking engagements. Can't forget about attending the most fabulous events, galas, happy hours, and of course, Sunday brunch. Though the real masterpiece uses dark and mysterious colors that represent the guilt and the shame and the pain that my heart felt. I knew better. But if I knew better, why didn't I do better? I mean, I do have the right to explore my sexual liberation. Why didn't I do that responsibly? Enough of that. Let's talk about the beauties of art. I can paint whatever picture I want you to see. Outside looking in, you think this masterpiece is complete. A true masterpiece is always evolving and changing. So that was an excerpt from a piece that I did. I believe that was the Mirror on a Wall show that we did at Gallaudet University. We did do multiple shows at that one as well, sold out shows at that one as well. Throwbacks, like, listen, AJ, I've been trying to get you to do like a reunion show and redo some of the scenes from all of the years, because now Breaking Ground has like a body of work. We really do.
Yeah.
But so in that particular year, I played a HIV positive advocate who was navigating being an advocate in sexual health and prevention and, Ryan White and all of that stuff, doing the speaking engagements, and then also navigating managing their diagnosis, managing the trauma that comes along with getting a chronic illness diagnosis. So that was the character I played. And for when the advocates saw me in the community, they were like, oh my God, like, girl, you in my living room or something? Like, you telling my life story. Like, they really connected well with that piece. And a part of that storyline, the character was like having a scene burnt out. Like, burnt out. And so we want to talk a little bit about that on this section. So AJ, like, with the work that you do and, again, connecting the piece that we did about, the HIV advocate, like, how do you prioritize self-care and burnout prevention. And, I would imagine, AJ, you are an expert because you have juggled many things. And there was like times I was concerned, like you had so much going on, but now I feel like I am you in school, in work, trying to live my best collegiate life. Like, I identify so much more with you now that I'm also doing the social work program at UDC. But back to the question, like, how do you prioritize self-care and then prevent burnout?
Oh, wow. Question of my life, right? So one thing I will say is Rodderick has been someone through the years who has always taken me aside, when I see him on the streets or even at rehearsal, just AJ, have you slept? AJ, are you taking care of yourself? Which I always really appreciated because he knew that, yes, I was doing the most. So just to give a little context, in my 20s, when I had, the energy, I was doing way too much. My mindset at the time was my 20s are about hustling, so my 30s are about building, so my 40s I can just relax, right? I was looking at the long-term game. So there was a point where for a few years, I had 2 full-time jobs, 2 part-time jobs, a contracting job. I was running Impulse Group DC. I was in full-time school, an internship for school, and Breaking Ground, all this exact same time, while trying to still maintain a social life and family and all of these other pieces as well too. I look and everyone used to ask me, AJ, well, how are you doing this? How are you breathing? And I just don't know. I just would go. I don't know if it was the energy I had at the time. I think I just had certain goals, right? And people would say, you're going to burn out. You need to relax. You need to self-care. I was like, I had self-care. I'm doing brunch with my friends on Sunday. I'm good, But though that's not exactly what the self-care was, right? So it's interesting what my journey of burnout and self-care awareness, and how that came to fruition, right? So it was actually COVID. So right before COVID, I was in that space where I was in my last year of grad school. It was a full-time grad school. I was in an internship for 20 hours a week doing therapy. Um, at that time, 2 full-time jobs, Impulse and Breaking Ground was happening at the same time. And then COVID hit, right? Everything shut down, everything stopped, right? And I had lost one of my jobs due to COVID, one of my full-time jobs. 2 of my contracts ran out. I stepped down from Impulse. Breaking Ground was only in the summertime. This was not during the summer. So I was sitting there like, what the hell am I supposed to be doing right now? Like, what am I supposed to be doing? Right? I was literally sitting in my house with high anxiety because I was not doing something. So I was always on 10, 24 hours a day for over 10 years. There was not a moment that I was not on 10, right? And so it was a lot. It was heavy. It was challenging. I found myself like trying to do things, but the world was saying I couldn't, right? I didn't have a job at the time. I was done with school. I just graduated school, so I was done with that. The internship ended. Everything came to a halt. And it's honestly a pretty dark place for me because I just did not know what to do. I felt useless. I did not know how tired I was. A buildup of 10 years. I didn't know how much it was impacting me. And so January of 2021 came around, and at the exact same time while I was applying for jobs, the exact same week, I was offered 3 full-time jobs, and I accepted them all. Because I was so in that space that I need to get back to my regular self. So I accepted 3 full-time jobs. Within the same month, I bought a puppy and I moved to a new apartment. Because that's what I know. That's what's comfortable for me, right? Nope. After a year of me being, in a place where I just had to sit down, I no longer had that energy. I no longer had that drive. So for me to take on all these things at the exact same time was a huge wake-up call for me. And I said to say, AJ, get it together. My anxiety of taking on all these things at the exact same time was on 1,000. It was worse than when I was doing nothing, right? And I felt like I wasn't being productive or effective in anything I was doing. Because mind you, while I'm moving and have a new puppy and working 3 jobs and doing all this literally overnight, I'm still dealing with a pandemic and what that looks like. We're still dealing with 2020 and the election and, George Floyd and like all these other pieces, right? So I got to a place, and it took me about a year to get there, where I just had to prioritize and be realistic. And I had to say, let these things go. Just let things go. Find a place that just works for you, right? So, I moved. That was over and done with. My dog, the first few months are hard, but after that, she's cool, she'll whatever. I let go of a contract. I let go of one of the full-time jobs. I just came to a place of peace. I was able to find a way to have the 2 full-time jobs to work where it's just a Monday through Friday on a 9 to 5 for both of them, and made it work and managed it. And now that's all I'm doing. It's literally like Monday through Friday at work, 9 to 5, breaking grounds in the summertime, and that's all I do. And it's literally this just place of just where I can rest and just breathe and just be and reconnect with family and friends that I've neglected over the past 10 years of my 20s, where I missed birthday parties and weddings and funerals and all these major life milestones because I had to work, because I had class, because I had an impulse event or ... And so, I'm reclaiming my time, I guess I could say, of being able to just find what peace looks like for me. So to answer your question, it wasn't so much of a intentional process for me as much. It was more so of the world said, sit down, AJ. And then I just had to make a choice to listen to that and readjust and figure out how I'm going to make it work. Right. And to be honest, when I do have that free time now, I'm at home with my dog chilling. I don't want to socialize necessarily, to go out to all the happy hours or be at all the social events. I don't need to. Like, I'm okay with just being and resting and enjoying time with my dog and catching up on my housewives and relaxing, right? And I honestly have never felt better.
And so first off, it brings me so much joy to hear. To hear that you're prioritizing AJ King and prioritizing what does self-care look like for you, because listening to you talk, I feel like I can definitely relate to you. I think, while I'm happy, like your world around you told you to sit down, but the broader scope is, in society, a lot of times we're also pushed to work all the time. It's all about work, so you can enjoy retirement, at a certain point in your life, but you need to like have some balance. That work-life balance is important. That, the importance of the breath, the importance of just being, the importance of connecting with your peers and having that social space and those recreational activities, like all of that is vital part of your experience in life. We're not here just to work. Like, and I also love that you mentioned that sometimes we need to let things go. Like, sometimes I actually say, like, okay, I release whatever I'm holding on that I was not supposed to keep. It's not meant for me to hold. It's not meant for me to keep. Like, sometimes I have to say that out loud. Like, and so thank you so much for that, King.
And so to say that, a big part of that process was therapy too. My therapist kept busting up in me, AJ, why do you need to do this? Why do you have to be part of this X, Y, and Z? How is this thing benefiting you? What is this going to get you in the long term? And I was pushing back for a long time. I was like, because I need to, because I have to, because Therapy got me together. I had a good one. He was a good one. So yeah, I do advocate.
I feel you. It's hard to resist that voice where it's like, they need me. If I don't do it, who's going to do it?
Yep.
Also, selfishly, I have a small aside. I would love to hear more about your dog. I have a little lady dog too, and I love her so much.
That's my baby.
I love it. Yes, and I have met Shanice's dog. She is adorable. All right, AJ. So let me ask you, what advice would you give to someone looking to incorporate art and storytelling into advocacy?
I think that an individual's got to start from the place of identifying what they want their message and their advocacy to be, right? So whatever the advocacy looks like, whether it's for homeless populations, individuals living with HIV, victims of domestic violence, whatever the advocacy piece is that you're looking at, do you want things on a more macro level where, we're talking about this community just in general? Are we talking about a very specific community or nuance within the community? So once you kind of identify that little bullseye of what you want to focus on, from there, my advice is to be free. Because if we're talking about art can look so many different ways, right? Art can look like, if you want it to be a fashion show, if you want it to be a theater production, if you want it to be an open mic, cool. Let people decide what that art looks like for them, as long as you kind of have that piece around that bullet point of what you want it to look like. When I was with Impulse Group DC, we had there were 4 pillars that we focused on: mental health, racial equity, HIV, and substance use. And, we were very intentional with every event to make sure that it was new and innovative in a way that things had never been done or seen before. So we did, like around crystal meth, addiction within our community. We were able to find a director who created a whole documentary around the crystal meth epidemic in Black gay communities, and just rented out a whole theater and just showed the movie. And, it was free tickets and free popcorn. And, there was a talk back afterwards. And it was a way to have entertainment and art as a vehicle to address crystal meth addiction. We did a boat cruise, that was focused on sexual health, and HIV and testing and PrEP. And, there's different ways to make advocacy fun. I mean, I think, when people think of advocacy, they think of, just sitting in a support group or looking at data and statistics. But there's ways to make it fun. There's ways to make it innovative. There's ways to, get people involved and wanting to, feel like they're seen within that and utilize their talents to push that advocacy message as well, too. So be free. Find out what you want your focal point is and be free around that.
I love all of that. And I totally agree, AJ. It's definitely important to discuss, what is the mission? What is the vision? What is the purpose? And then you can kind of base your activities based upon that. And then I love that you mentioned making advocacy fun, because sometimes it's not fun. It's really not. So, as of lately, I have been so intentional about celebrating joys and victories and, different things like that. So I would definitely agree, make advocacy fun. And then, in terms of what you do for your advocacy, do what you enjoy. I've been intentional about, exploring what does advocacy look like and doing things that I enjoy. All right. So I'm going to pass it over to Shanice for our closing questions.
It's very bittersweet because I've really enjoyed this time with you, AJ. I want to be your friend. So for our first closing question, what do you love about the South?
Oh, wow. Okay. So, so it's interesting because every time that people say DC is the South, I'm like, are we though? But we are, right? So, I think that the South is so diverse in culture and so diverse in, food and the way the dialects and traditions. And, I here in DC, what I love about DC specifically is that this is such a transient city, but we have such progressive values, morals. We have a lot of opportunity to get access to resources, government resources, and advocacy, and just everything, right? That's very specific to this little bubble of DC, right? That most of the country does not have the same privileges. When we look at the South, where my family's from, so all my family's in Florida, which, there's a lot of stuff around Florida that we hear about in the news. I think that there's just this sense of camaraderie and family values and connection and protection for loved ones that's in the South that I see, right? DC, we're a little bit more north, so we're a little bit more disconnected, kind of every man for himself. I see in the South, I see, with my family in Texas and Georgia as well, too. It's very much about, this is my family. We eat together, we roll together, we protect each other. We're very welcoming to the neighbor. We want to be that individual that has a Southern hospitality. And most importantly, child, they can cook down there. That food in the South, whew, it's the good stuff. From someone who can't cook, Rodderick will tell you I specialize in Cheerios. That is my, number one menu item. Going down to the South, I always eat good. So, especially, and that's not only just home cooked meals, got to have a Waffle House. So, I think that just the South, I think culturally, is I've always been very attracted to it. Even personally, I've always dated if you look at my dating history, every man I've dated has been from the South, and typically like country South, like country South. So, yeah, I just love it. I love the South.
And I love that. I don't cook either. I'm a microwave chef, microwave and air fryer. You touched on this a little bit already, but I would love to hear more about what you want to see for the South. So, what do you want to see for the South? Like your vision, your hopes?
Yeah. Ooh, that's loaded. So what I named earlier, is DC. We're in this bit of a bubble, this progressive bubble, right? And we see this influx of individuals who live in the South moving to DC, trying to attain DC resources, rightfully so. And I just want better policies, better advocacy, more support for marginalized populations in the South, for people of color, for women, for LGBTQIA populations, for undocumented individuals. The list goes on and on and on. I think that, it's all rooted in our historical relationship with the South. And we are not breaking from that for whatever reason. If you want some sense of support and you're from a more marginalized populations, you're forced to go to a major city. You have to go to Atlanta. You have to go to Houston. You have to go to Miami, right? But what about those individuals who don't have the privilege or the resources to go to a major city, right? Or just don't want to because their family and their loved ones are in this small town in Alabama. Why I have to leave them just so that I can be seen? So I stay with my family, who I love, who, when this community hates me because I'm a gay man, or move away from my loved ones just so and be seen and respected. We shouldn't have to make that choice. We shouldn't have to make that choice. So I just want better legislation, protections, and support for marginalized populations in the South, just in general.
Thank you, AJ. And for our next question, how can people get in touch with you and your programs?
Great. So the best way to contact me is through email. It's alexanderking31489@gmail.com. I can put that in the chat as well, too. And, if you are a young person living in the DC metropolitan area up to the age of 30 and you're LGBTQIA of color and you want to join the Breaking Ground cast, our 2024 year will do auditions in May. So feel free to reach out. If you are someone who wants to donate to the program or support it in any type of capacity, please reach out. We are actually going to be in our 10th year anniversary next year. We have big goals, so we're trying to make happen. Ideally, we are going to be at the Kennedy Center next year. It's not set in stone, but we got to have those resources for that. So if you want to donate or support in any capacity to make this happen, to really support, this 10-year anniversary, that would be amazing. Or if you just have questions, feel free to reach out. I'm always available to chat and talk about not only the program, but hear about the work that they're doing as well, too, and see if there's possible for collaboration.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I have one more question. Circling back to your expertise and your passions, is there any art that you're excited about right now? Is there anything that you're working on that you'd like to talk about?
The production that we had this year for Breaking Ground, we had in September, was really proud of the work that the cast did. That was, it was very powerful stories that they told and very impactful as well, too. Very brave, very brave individuals, from talking about literal debilitating chronic medical conditions that they decided to put on stage to, challenges around intimacy and relationships due to sexual abuse as childhood, like anything that, people don't like to talk about or expose, they put it in front of, 250 people on stage.
Thank you so much. I'm going to pass things back over to Rodderick.
Thank you.
AJ. Oh, this was such an honor and pleasure to be in the space with you. Shout out to Breaking Ground alumni. Also, I do know that the content is available on YouTube.
Yeah, I can shoot you the YouTube channel. It has all of the shows up through last year's show.
Okay, perfect. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us, AJ King.
Thank y'all so much. I really appreciated this.
It's been an absolute joy to spend this time with you.
All right, everyone. So now I'm going to go into the segment of our show called Southern Charm. So I wanted to highlight Breaking Ground's physical sponsor, SMYAL. So SMYAL stands for Supporting and Mentoring Youth Advocates and Leaders. SMYAL supports and empowers lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning LGBTQ youth in Washington, D.C. metropolitan region. Through youth leadership, SMYAL creates opportunities for LGBTQ youth to build self-confidence, to develop critical life skills, and engage their peers and community through service and advocacy. Committed to social change, SMYAL builds, sustains, and advocates for programs, policies, and services that LGBTQ youth need as they grow into adulthood. SMYAL offers a variety of services for LGBTQ youth, like housing, mental health, sexual health, scholarships, and more. So shout out to Breaking Ground, shout out to SMYAL for all the amazing work that they're doing with youth in DC, like the famous Whitney Houston, our beloved Whitney Houston. I do believe that the children are our future. So yeah, so we're going to go ahead and close it on out. So again, thank you to AJ King for joining us and being an amazing guest on the show. Shanice, this was wonderful to do this with you. Like, I was really excited to co-host the show with you. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. So my name is Rodderick Shepherd.
And I'm Shanice Bailey.
And thank you for listening to Southern Steep.
We'll see y'all next time.